Hi everyone, today is a video regarding our little trip to a place called Annapolis Royal. It's a beautiful, beautiful spot in Nova Scotia, Canada, and I'd like to share the trip with you. And the idea of this video is really to bring you a little bit of a smile on your face and to share the beauty that we were exposed to. And sometimes it's easy to miss and forget that there's a lot of beauty and happiness around us, just sort of waiting to be tapped in. And this trip was really refreshing for us in that regard, to remind us about what a wonderful place we live in. Right now, with the pandemic, obviously, things are hard and things are different. And it's important to find those little moments of beauty and happiness to latch on to. We spent about a day and a half in the area, and we stopped at Queen Anne Hotel. This is a historical hotel, as you can see obviously from the footage. It really is supposed to depict the time of Queen Anne. There's end of 19th century, beginning of 20th century flair to it mostly, but there are vintage pieces that are much older than that. And it does create a very calm and peaceful feeling of the olden days gone by. There are authentic pieces of art, a Tiffany vase. I was very impressed with that. And just, it has been created to time transport. And the time transport feeling, the time travel feeling that you get from staying somewhere like that is truly special, and it's really lovely to be able to participate in that. Unfortunately, the hotel does not allow children, and that's a shame, obviously, but I can understand why. They have beautifully finished vintage pieces that they do not want spoiled. So we weren't able to bring our kid. When he's old enough, I'm sure we will return and make sure that we share this little magical spot with him. Annapolis Royal is a waterfront community. It's small and it is tucked into Annapolis Valley. Originally, it was inhabited by the Mi'kmaq. However, in 1605, the area became the first earliest North American settlement by European settlers. It's a very vibrant center of cultural activity. There's a lot of art. Crafting is huge in the area, and it's become a big attraction for tourists, visual artists, crafts people, performance writers. The area is very rich in creative people, creatively minded people. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, it became much more difficult to, um, to create and sell art. So the area is quite empty at the moment when we are there. But luckily, it seems that the hotel has survived and it hasn't struggled enough to be unable to operate. The area of Annapolis Royal is beautifully situated between mountains and sea, and it gives us a chance to enjoy a stunning waterfront area. Usually there are lots of restaurants open. It's a very bustling area, especially in the summer during the tourist season. This year, not so, but still very, very enjoyable. Really, there are 400 years of French, Scottish, and British history just put on the blender and mixed up, and what came out came out. And all of that is deeply rooted in the story of the Mi'kmaq, unfortunately being displaced. The first European settlement in North America, I mean, what a rich bit of Canadian history. It's Canada's oldest national historic site, Fort Anne, that's located right across from Annapolis Royal. There are also over 135 registered heritage properties, so this gives you an idea of how rich the history is and how rich the visual history is. You can really feel the spirit of Annapolis. You can really understand and participate, bathe in the history, because it's kind of all around you. There's just so much of it. It's bulk of history, preserved historical properties, and the streetscape has been designated as a National Historic District. just because of the amount of beautiful, old, well-preserved historical properties that are in the area. Right now you're seeing us look around the garden. The property of the hotel is beautifully maintained. Obviously, the owners are putting a tremendous amount of effort into the property and into the hotel. There are lots of lounge areas around there. As you can see right now, I'm looking at the hammock. It's a little wet, so we didn't test it out. And the gardening is exquisite. There is just so much greenery around. It's impossible to not be exposed to nature therapy in this kind of an environment. Today, Annapolis Royal is the second settlement of the French, and it's not the same area that was settled in 1605 by the French settlers, which is now called Port Royal National Historic Site, also known as habitation, habitation. However, this settlement, the Annapolis Royal, was renamed in honor of Queen Anne after 1710 siege by Britain. In general, there's about 6 different times that the area changed hands. The British and the French fought over it vigorously for a century and a half. The town was the capital of Acadia and later Nova Scotia for almost 150 years until Halifax was founded in 1749. So, if you are not familiar with the area, Halifax wasn't always the capital of Nova Scotia. It used to be Port Royal. At that time, the French and their allies made 6 unsuccessful military attempts to regain the capital, and as a result, we have Nova Scotia having been very close to being Acadian, truly a French province, maybe a French speaking province, has gone to the British and has remained Anglophone, mostly Anglophone, over the next hundreds of years at this point. We have gone for a walk looking at the area around. This is the street on which the hotel is located, and the yellow building that you see in front of you right now is a wonderful, really delicious German bakery. 2 German bakers immigrated to Annapolis Royal and opened this lovely classical German bakery, and very, very comparable to the authentic German bakeries in Germany. I can attest to that. Walking through the streets, as you can see, there's really nobody out at that point because of the pandemic, but normally my understanding is it's a pretty lively area. Then you make it to the pier. The pier is overlooking the water, and again, it's pretty empty right now, but not usually. Usually, this is a bustling part of the city, or of the town, I should say. And we can see the boardwalk. We can see that the day is a little bit gloomy and moody, which adds to the charm. It's situated, the town is situated in the shallow harbor at the west end of the Annapolis Valley. It's between North and South Mountains. They define the valley. You can see it in some of the footage. The town is on the south bank of the Annapolis River. It faces a heavily tidal Annapolis Basin. The Bay of Fundy is over the North Mountain. It's about 10 kilometers north of the town, and Bay of Fundy is an exceptional thing of beauty that I would really recommend you to see if you're able to. Bay of Fundy is very famous for extremely high tides. Tides are changing the entire landscape of the area, and it's a miracle almost to watch how high or how low the tides can drop, and then at the low tide you can walk almost through valleys of sand. It creates an interesting feeling of you being on a totally different planet because it looks maybe like the dunes should be filmed there, almost like a wet desert. It's quite fascinating, very, very interesting. Here you see that the tide is high at this particular moment. We're not at the Bay of Fundy right now, so it wouldn't be quite the same, but the tides are pretty high here also. Upon walking the pier, we found this prototype of the boat in the middle of being built. I mean, this is specifically showing the process of building a classical boat that would have been used at the time by the settlers. We are at the Annapolis Wharf, obviously, right now, as you can tell. We stopped for some food in this very eclectic restaurant. The food was okay, so I'm not going to totally advertise it. But the decor was really what spoke to me because it was very, very eclectic. We returned in the evening to our hotel to rest and read and relax and take a bath and get ready for tomorrow. This is the sitting room, apparently very classically designed sitting room for the time period. It is quite overwhelming as a more of a minimalist. I had just the explosion of colors and textures in my face. Our stay did include breakfast. We had crepes, very, very classical French crepes for breakfast. And they were served in the dining room. You can see through from the sitting room to the dining room. And that was part of the stay. It was included in the stay, included in as part of the experience that you're paying for. Our intention and the plan for the trip was really to learn more about the history of the province we live in and to familiarize ourselves more with the local flair and flavor, which I think we really achieved. We were pretty tired after walking around. We saw several galleries that we were very excited to visit, but unfortunately, because of the pandemic, they were closed at the time, and we never really got a chance to see the local art. But generally, um, if you are a fan of sort of craft folk art, you would find a lot of beautiful pieces here. This is not my personal favorite style of art, but I would have enjoyed seeing it. And then right now we're walking through the Botanical Gardens. That's the other highlight of um, of being in Annapolis Royal. They have actually a beautiful and rather large area dedicated to botanical gardens. The gardens are overlooking a tidal river valley, and they're called the Historic Gardens. And their website boasts that it is a premier Nova Scotia attraction showcasing gardening methods, designs, and materials. The Annapolis Royal Historic Gardens have been in operation since 1981, so there's 17 acres in total. They call it 17 acres of paradise. And it's a proud moment for the local inhabitants because it is truly a very, very, very beautiful place. And here we're approaching the rose garden. It has over 100 varieties of roses. It is in full bloom right now, and it's going to provide us with some beautiful rose scent as we walk through it. That's the entrance to the garden, and the roses start right at the beginning here. Historic Rose Garden.
Keeping this from getting chaotic takes a lot of work to come in through the middle. Train in the branches. There we go. As long as they're like this, yes, but not these puny little tiny ones. Victorian roses.
Here we're approaching the Acadian house. This is a replica of an Acadian first settler's house that was built based on data from excavations and historical records. So this is supposed to be pretty accurate to the time and pretty accurate to the type of things that they would have put in their garden. The house itself is accurate to the way that a house would be built in the area. Here we can observe some inhabitants of the park, the black squirrels. They are ever present, the very, very fluffy tails. Black squirrels and chipmunks do tend to appear quite often in these parts. Here we're traveling towards the French garden. There's an English side, there's the rose garden, there's a French side. And the style of gardening is definitely very different between the English and the French side of the Botanical Gardens. The architecture, the way things are planted, planned out, and manicured does tend to differ tremendously between the two parts of the area. I found a beautiful, completely overgrown pond with trickling water, and it is exceptionally relaxing to be present in an environment like that. I just was saddened by the fact that I didn't bring my sketch pad so I couldn't sit down and do some sketching. That would have been lovely because the area is beautiful and the little pond was very, very adorable. Here we're approaching the French garden. As I was mentioning before, there's a big difference between how meticulous and precise the gardening is. French gardening is known for symmetry, geometry. We have a little rock fountain over here, and normally, apparently, there'd be a lot of coins in the pond, but there's not much going on in terms of coinage in the pond this time around just because of the pandemic. Here's the precision gardening that I was talking about. There isn't anything a millimeter out of sight of where it's not supposed to be, and they're very geometrical, satisfying, oddly satisfying. feelings that you have when you're looking at something that is well organized like that. My husband is a big fan of French gardening, the precise trims, the geometric setup. For me, I like something a little bit more organic looking and free flowing, but it's a question of taste and whatever you feel is most in tune with your inner self, I suppose. And that concludes our walk through the Botanical Gardens. We have had a lot of fun in Annapolis Royal, although unfortunately due to the pandemic, we couldn't have the full experience. We will be back once the pandemic quiets down and things are a little bit more back to normal, but we enjoyed our time at the Botanical Gardens immensely. It was a very beautiful and inspiring nature-rich trip. If you're looking to get your mind into a better headspace, definitely try some nature therapy. I hope all is well in your world. Have a good day. All the best to you and stay safe. Stay safe and stay well. Bye-bye.